You've heard it 100 times before. Be positive. Just believe in yourself. You've got this. And maybe this is something you've also said to yourself after a mistake or before a big game. But here's the truth, and the truth that most people won't tell you is that positive thinking doesn't always work. And when it doesn't, especially under pressure, it can often make things worse. So today I want to show you something different, something that elite athletes use at the highest levels of competition. And it's called neutral thinking. It's honest. It's grounded in truth. And it might be one of the most practical mental skills that you ever train. Welcome back to the Mental Game Gym podcast. I am your host and your mental performance coach, Andrew Crome. And today we are diving into neutral thinking. What is it? Why it's important? Why can positive thinking and negative thinking be so detrimental to performance? So let's start by looking at why positive thinking can backfire. A lot of people think that there are only two options of I either speak negatively or I'm speaking and thinking positively. But there is a third option. But let's look into more about the positive thinking and how it can backfire. And I want to be clear here that the optimism isn't the enemy. Positive thinking can be helpful. Confidence is important. But when athletes are told only to think positive, then they often get stuck. So this is what can happen. Let's say, for example, you miss a shot and your brain starts spinning. Thoughts pop up in your head saying, that was terrible. I'm falling apart. Typically what happens then is that you try to fight with it, right? Because we're conditioned to think, oh, we must think positive. So maybe you say something like, no, I'm amazing. I've got this. I'll get the next one. But you don't believe it. Deep down, you're not believing what you're saying because it doesn't match with how you're feeling and what you're thinking. So it feels fake. It feels forced. And now instead of focusing on your game, you're locked in a mental battle with yourself. Your focus, your energy is on battling these thoughts and trying to turn them into more positive ones, as opposed to focusing on the next play or your current performance and where you need to be and what you need to do. So trying to replace those negative thoughts with fake positivity often adds pressure. And when the outcome doesn't match the hype, then you can spiral out of control. Psychologist Gabrielle Oettingen from NYU studied this exact problem. In her book, Rethinking Positive Thinking, she discovered that fantasizing about success without acknowledging real obstacles can actually make people less likely to succeed. And this is because when you imagine things going perfectly, your brain starts to relax as if you've actually done the work. And that robs you of urgency. It reduces your motivation to act. So what she did was she created a tool called WOOP, which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan. So she got people to think about what is your wish? What is something that you want to accomplish? What is your dream? What is your goal? And then what is the best possible outcome? What would happen once you achieve that goal? How would you feel? What would you be able to do if you reach that goal? So the best possible outcome, what would it look like? Then she got them to think about an obstacle. What is an obstacle within you that has the chance of stopping you from getting to where you want to go, to getting to that outcome? And then she got them to make a plan. So if that obstacle showed up, then this is what I'm going to do. So let's look at an example of an athlete, and their wish was to improve their endurance by going running 4 times a week, right? The best possible outcome, right? They'll feel more healthy. They'll feel more fit. They'll be able to compete at a higher level because they have that endurance and they've built up that strength. But an obstacle that stands in that person's way could be not feeling like going for a run after a long day. They'd rather just sit on the couch and watch TV. So then the plan comes up. If I don't feel like going for the run, I'm going to put my shoes on and I'm going out for a run. And that's the plan. If this obstacle shows up, this is what I'm going to do. So they're not just thinking about the best possible situation, but they're thinking about what are some things that stand in my way that stops me from getting to where I want to get to. And then what am I going to do about it if they show up? And this combines hope with realism, imagination with strategy. And this fits into what we're talking about today, because that's what neutral thinking does. It doesn't hype you up and it doesn't beat you down. It says, this might get hard. Let's be ready for that. Let's put in the practice. We're not getting down. If things get hard, we're not complaining and getting down on ourselves and beating ourselves up. And then we're not also just thinking everything's going to be perfect, because we have to be realistic. Things are going to happen. We're going to make mistakes. Things are going to get hard. So being ready for that and knowing if these things happen, this is what I'm going to do. So we have a plan in place. And that is really useful for when you're in those pressure situations, because you have that thing to go to. So let's define really what neutral thinking is. It's a performance-focused mindset, right? As I said, it's honest. So it doesn't sugarcoat things, but it's also judgment-free, and that's really important. It doesn't beat you up. You're looking at the facts. This is what just happened. This is what I'm going to do. It's also action-based, right? It asks, what's next? What do I have to do now? What action do I have to do that's going to help me in this moment? Neutral thinking was popularized by Trevor Moawad, who was a mental coach for athletes, Navy SEALs, business leaders, and he also most notably worked closely with NFL quarterback Russell Wilson. And when Russell made a mistake, an interception, or he had a bad game, he didn't try to psych himself up. He didn't say, I'm the best, or this is no big deal. He said, that happened. What's true? What's next? Let's go. So he looked at the facts without judgment, without emotion, and he looked at what happened, what was true, what am I going to do about it? Okay, let's go and do that. So they're not getting stuck. They're not overthinking things. And that's a common issue that we all have, is that we can often get stuck by overthinking things and worrying about things that could happen or things that have happened. So if we just look at, okay, what are the facts? What happened? What is true? What do I need to do now? And Trevor put it this way: positive thinking doesn't work for most people. Negative thinking always works. It just works against you. So neutral thinking is the sweet spot. So we've looked at positive thinking. We've looked at a little bit about neutral thinking. But let's look at negative thinking. And we've all done it. We all experience negative thoughts. That's something that we can't get away from. But most people don't realize how powerful and how dangerous negative thinking, especially saying negative things out loud, is. So according to Trevor and also research, saying something negative out loud makes it 10 times more powerful than just thinking it. And that's because when you speak it, you're programming your brain and your nervous system to believe it. So if you miss a shot and you say out loud, I'm trash, or you drop the pass and say, I always mess up, you might think it's just venting, but your brain doesn't. Your brain is listening. Your subconscious is always listening. So what you're doing is literally reinforcing your identity with your words. And the science backs this up. So Christine Porath, a professor at Georgetown, has studied how negative words and behaviors can affect performance. And her research shows that just witnessing a negative comment, not even directed at you, can cause your performance to drop by up to 25%. If that negativity is self-directed, then your memory can decrease, your attention narrows, your confidence drops. and therefore your performance also drops. So it's important to know that words matter, especially the ones that you say to yourself and the ones that you say out loud. So we really have to think about what we're doing there. So let me tell you a story that captures this perfectly. It's about a teenager who was struggling, failing out of high school. He didn't think of himself as smart. He didn't see a future for himself. Then one day he decided to take the SAT, and his results came back, and he got a 1480 out of 1600, a very high score, and he was stunned. His mum even asked, "Did you cheat?" And he said, "I tried to cheat, but it was really hard for me to do that. So, no, I didn't cheat." So he was stunned, and suddenly he saw himself differently. He saw himself, well, now I'm smart. So he started going to class. What does a smart person do? Started going to class, started doing the work, right? Started to apply himself. And then he graduated, went to college, and then ultimately became one of the most successful magazine entrepreneurs in the country. Fast forward 12 years after he did the test, he got a letter in the mail saying that his SAT score that he received was somebody else's, and his actual score was a 740 out of 1600. So this is half of what he thought he had. So what changed? It wasn't his IQ. It wasn't his talent, but it was his belief. He went from thinking, I'm not smart enough, to maybe I am capable. And once that belief changed, he started behaving like a 1480, not a 740. So he started going to class. He stopped hanging out with the people that he was hanging out with that were holding him back. And this is what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. The belief that you can improve, the belief that the future is unwritten, and that your past doesn't necessarily predict what your future is going to be. And that's neutral thinking in disguise. We're not saying I'm amazing or I'm doomed. It's just, let's see what's possible. If I take the next step. So here's the big idea. Here's the main takeaway. Be fake positive to perform well. You don't have to eliminate every doubt or fear or every mistake. The number one thing you need to do is stop giving negative thinking the microphone and saying stupid things out loud, and start practicing something more grounded, something more consistent, which is neutral thinking. It doesn't hype you up. It doesn't hold you back, but it brings you back to truth. What's real? What's in my control? What's the next right move? And that's where your power is. So this week, when pressure hits, or when you maybe start to spiral, don't reach for empty positivity. Don't say, I've got this, if you don't believe it. Say, what's true right now? What's next? Let's go. And if you catch yourself saying something negative out loud, just stop yourself, reframe it, go neutral. Your words matter, your mindset matters, and your next behavior, that's what defines you and your performance. If you notice a teammate speaking negatively out loud, teach them this. Send this to your teammates. Send this to other people that they can learn from this and realize that it's not just negative or positive, but we have a choice of, we can be neutral. We can decide to deal with the facts, what's right in front of us, what's the truth, and then what do I need to do right now? And then act on that, as opposed to trying to give yourself that fake positivity that deep down you don't believe, or being negative, right? So if this episode hit home for you, send it to someone else that you may think will help. If you have questions about this episode, neutral thinking, or anything else, find me on Instagram at The Mental Game Gym. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast for future episodes. I've got some exciting guests lined up that you won't want to miss. And also check the show notes for a free neutral thinking reflection guide. And until next time, stay neutral, stay grounded, and play free.